how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time, but
Well, thanks a lot for taking the time.
yeah, thanks for accommodating me. I'm happy to be here.
So, welcome Dimitry Cohen. Dimitri's the executive director of product management at Comcast. Comcast is a telecommunications and media company that provides internet, TV, phone, and streaming services to millions of customers across the US. Comcast is the largest company in Philadelphia. It's also one of the city's largest private employers, and the Comcast building itself is the tallest building in the city. Welcome, Dimitri.
Thanks, Brandon. Excited to be here.
You work at Comcast, the company. For those unfamiliar, what's the difference between Comcast and Xfinity?
Sure. So Comcast, or officially Comcast NBC Universal, is a international company. It has a variety of business units, everything from Sky, our telecom offering in the UK and in Europe. We have Comcast Advertising, Comcast Business. Xfinity is our US based residential offering. So when you think about your broadband connectivity, mobile phone service, streaming, cable, um, and your household, what you're buying is from our Xfinity brand.
So you're the executive director of product management at Comcast. What does that role entail, and what types of products is your team focused on right now?
Sure. So when I first joined the company, I thought product management for internet connectivity. What do you mean? There's
Right.
already internet. What more is there to produce or manage?
Yeah.
But as I came to learn, the space is hyper competitive. The technology is rapidly evolving. So there's a lot to do. In terms of product management, our role really is to sit at the center of a lot of different functions and do I think three key things. We first have to answer who's our customer and what are the real needs and problems that they have. We have to define, what the solutions are, and then work with our partners and developers, engineers, marketers, etc., to bring those things to life. So we have to really answer, how can we bring a winning value proposition and a winning product to life? What does it look like technically? And I have to define those requirements. How do we make our technicians and our care support staff, support it in the best way? How do we market this and communicate it
Mm.
in a way that customers will appreciate it and want it, and understand it? And then, also we have to make sure that it makes business sense too. And so how do we size the right opportunities, go after the right customer segments, and develop the right products in a way that's not just an awesome product, but ultimately does give money back to our shareholders?
So can you give me an example of some products that you worked on recently?
Sure. So, one that we'll probably talk about later is Xfinity talks about its awesome broadband network and its super fast speeds and things like that. And that's an awesome offering for the vast majority of the company
Yeah.
in the country. And what we found from a lot of research is there is some customers that want internet that just works. They don't want all the bells and whistles.
Okay.
And so as we focus on the value segment, last year we launched a whole portfolio of connectivity solutions and entertainment solutions under a new sub brand called Now, and that's our prepaid product. We'll talk more about that, but it's reliable internet for people that just want their internet to work and not worry about it, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that might add to some of the cost that someone might not want to pay if they're looking for the best internet.
So what do you mean it's prepaid? Like, what does the payment structure look like?
Prepaid means every month you basically have a choice, like, do I want to continue my service next month or not? And what we're
Oh,
really innovating here with this prepaid internet product is it's flexible. If you need to pause it for a duration of time, you can turn it off for a day, a month, etc.
so it really is month to month. I could get this for 1 month and then pause it for 6 months, whatever it may be.
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly.
Interesting. So what type of market research did you do that identified these customers that want this type of service? That this was actually a gap in the market, that some customers really just want month to month internet.
Yeah, so the month to month is just a feature of this product, but what we really found was the customers segmentation of who we serve is
Yeah.
really important. But like every other industry, like every other category, there are different types of customers.
Yeah.
So we have some customers that are, the most premium customers. They want the best of the best. When a new technology comes out, they want that technology. If there is Wi-Fi 7 and that gives you like multi-gig speeds, upload and down, they want that device, they want that hardware, they want that
Right.
service, get the lowest latency to do, gaming and virtual reality type
Mm.
things at home. But then there are people that just want to be able to watch Netflix at home
Yeah.
and don't want to spend a lot of money on their internet bill. And so again, as we did that customer segmentation, we found, hey, all the stuff that Xfinity really stands for, the best of the best, speaks to a lot of people, and we want to deliver that. But as we saw different even competitors enter the market, who they weren't saying, hey, we're the best internet service. They said, we're a good enough internet service.
I see.
And we started to see some customers find interest in those offerings. And so we said, okay, we've been telling the market, hey, Xfinity is the best, it's the fastest. And it is. But that wasn't resonating with some customers who were just saying, you know what? I just need help lowering my bill. I need to pay for groceries. I need to save up for a vacation. And so we said, okay, we can make a different product. We don't need to put all the bells and whistles. If you don't want to do smart home connectivity with hundreds of devices in your home,
Yeah.
then we have the right speeds and the right hardware to give you an internet offering that meets your needs.
What part of the organization do you sit within at Comcast, and what does the makeup of your team look like?
Yeah, so within product management, I think it's a great fit for my own personality. We're really at the center of the wheel, and we get to go an inch deep into a lot of different things, sometimes 2 inches deep.
Mhm.
But we've got to cover every aspect of the different functions. And so what we do, like I said, we've got to figure out who our customer is and what they need, and then we need to go work with all of the different functional experts to help bring that to life.
Okay.
So I need to go talk to an engineer and say, hey, here's how this hardware needs to perform. I need to talk to our user experience designers to say, here's how these customers like to shop and where they like to shop. I got
Okay.
to talk to our legal teams to make sure what we're saying is compliant and the right thing to say. Got to talk to our marketers, to our finance folks, to our customer service, leaders to make sure that we can support these products. And so, really, our product organization kind of sits at the center, and we've got to manage kind of the full life cycle
Oh,
and orchestrate that full life cycle of bringing a product to market. Everything from the upfront customer research and strategy, business case, the sizing of the market, the opportunity, is it profitable or not? How we're going to build it, what are the literal nuts and bolts that go into some of the hardware and some of the software behind the product. And then again, how do we bring it to market? How do we go to market from a pricing promotions standpoint? Now, we're not doing the full expertise on any one of those particular items, but we're orchestrating and working with the experts
right.
in every single function. So we work with pricing experts, work with customer care experts, technician experts, sales experts, engineers.
Mhm.
And so that's our role, is to advocate for, again, who the customer is and what they need, and carry that vision of that solution all the way through that full journey.
That's interesting. So
So
you're at the center of all those other, I guess, departments. But what about your teams? Like who do you manage? Who's on your team, and what are the roles on the team?
yeah, so as executive director, I've got a few product managers
Okay.
under me, and they've got their different responsibilities. So I've got one person that manages our hotspot based product. We
Mm,
call it Wi-Fi Pass. I've got another person that manages our now internet portfolio.
hmm.
So this is someone that's thinking about that prepaid space. And so typically in product management, you have someone that's thinking like a general manager. They own their product and they're thinking about that full life cycle. How do we sell it better? How can we deliver a better customer experience? How do we maybe take some cost out and maybe pass along some savings to customers? So they're kind of thinking again end to end through that journey, and they're working with the respective partners across each of those functions as well. And so in the product management org generally, sure, we're trading best practices on how to bring products to market, but generally my team kind of has their expertise on their product and other customer segment.
I see.
But they're spending most of their day talking to different functional experts outside of their team. And we're really only coming together as broader product org. So like I said, come up with our broader themes and vision and mission and strategy, and share some best practices. But most of my day is spent outside of my team as opposed to with other product managers.
Okay. Okay. We'll definitely come back to some of these products. I want to talk about kind of the life cycle and what the process looks like. Let's talk about your career journey and evolution, if you will. So, how did you get here? You have a degree in economics, philosophy, and psychology from Penn. And then you've had this interesting career spanning operations, sales, client services, and now product leadership. How did you find your way into product management?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I would say I definitely did not set out to be a product manager,
Okay.
but I think it makes sense that I've ended up here. Going back to college, and if you ask me even what my career is or my skill set is, what I'd say is I'm a problem solver. And so
Mm,
the things that I like to study back in college were all the disciplines around how you think about thinking. How do you identify a problem? How do you analyze a problem?
yeah.
How do you measure a problem? And how do you start to identify, is it factor A or factor B? So I just liked problem. I like thinking about problems and then solving problems. And so throughout my career, I didn't know what that translated into. Like you said, I rolled out into a marketing strategy function and then
Yeah.
did an analytics role and then did sales and then a little bit of operations. And, I think my career journey has always been finding interesting problems to work on that don't have obvious answers and figuring out, okay, at the crux of it, we're trying to solve problems mostly for our customers. And how do you do that? And again, in a marketing world, that's a particular set of problems. In an operations world, it's a different set of problems.
Right.
And what I found is when you do enough of those different experiences, the product management role, like I said, is you're orchestrating that end-to-end experience. And so when I was looking for the next step in my career, I said, you know what? I've got a really good view
Mm,
across the whole life cycle of bringing a product to life. Everything from strategy to operations. And I thought that, hey, product is a great way to do all those things at once. And so, funny enough, before coming to Comcast, I never had the role of product management, but I basically did a sliver of it at
yeah.
each juncture of my career. And so I kind of, almost like a capstone, if you will, wrapped it up in going into product management at Comcast.
And this was a conscious decision on your part. You realized, okay, I've done all these different things. I think product management would be a good next step for me. And then you pursued that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thought was like, hey, I've done marketing, I've done ops, I've done strategy.
Yeah.
Do I want to continue doing those things? And I've done them across industries too.
Yeah.
But I think the next challenge for me was how do you start to put those things together? And I think the options were start my own business
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, which I would love to do and don't have the risk appetite as a parent of two young kids right now.
Yeah.
Or again, the role of product management in different organizations is the way to do that. So I found it was the best way to kind of continue that curiosity that I have to continue to solve problems.
Okay.
And here I am. And like I said, it really helps when I'm working with my partners to say, hey, I'm talking to you as a customer care leader. I did a role in customer care and support. And so I know your pain. I know the metrics that you're
Oh,
worried about. And so I'm not just speaking to you as a product manager, but I'm speaking to you knowing what you're going through as well. And so I can relate that back to my work and we can partner a little bit on that.
so that's pretty smart because you've been exposed to these different areas. It helps you relate to the different stakeholders that you're dealing with in the product management lifecycle.
Exactly.
And when you decided that product management would be a good next step for you, did you then say, okay, Comcast is probably a great place to do that. I'm going to try to do this at Comcast? Walk me through that. Like what happened? Or did you see a role and it sort of just made sense to you at that moment?
Yeah. So throughout my career, I've never been, wed to a particular industry or problem set. It's more just find interesting problems.
Mhm.
As you saw, worked in financial services, consumer packaged
Mhm.
goods, transportation, youth sports. So the problem sets are all very different. What I knew, again, living in Philadelphia and wanting to keep my family here, was um, Comcast is they have a great residential offering, but what they're really doing on the technology side sets the standard for the industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of what they're building not just is used by Xfinity and Comcast, but we have a whole syndication business, and
Mhm.
we sell a lot of our technology to other telecom providers, not just in the U.S. but across the globe. And so we have a innovator of technology right here in Philadelphia, and I thought, there must be some interesting problems to solve
Oh
there.
yeah. So, can you walk us through a Comcast product that your team helped bring to life? Maybe it's the Now product, starting from the initial concept all the way to launch. So, what did the journey look like, and what were some key decisions or challenges along the way?
Oh, how do I condense, the last year plus into
Yeah.
into a few minutes? I will talk about the Now product. So, like we talked about earlier, um, we were looking at our business metrics. We were looking at our overall company strategy. And again, we had a lot of our business say, okay, we need to continue focusing on bringing the best Wi-Fi to the market.
Hmm.
But then we had this other part of our strategy and business say, hey, we've got some opportunity here on this other part, on this other end of the segment, which is customers that don't want the best. We
So let
started
me
with,
ask let me ask a
yeah,
question about that. Who identified that gap?
yeah. So when, again, you look at you can look at financial metrics.
Hmm.
We sell different product tiers. We have, our gig plus, we have 2 gig speeds. We have our, and then we have speeds below that. Where are we seeing growth and where are we seeing declines? So
Hmm.
you can start to stratify your customers and segment them that way. You can also see different competitors. Something that we saw was we compete on many fronts. We compete with mobile phone operators. We compete with fiber internet providers. And a new entrant into the market was this product around fixed wireless technology. So mobile players really starting to offer home internet service. And we said, okay, that seems to be growing. And again, when we looked at qualitative and quantitative research, we started to see, okay, there's appeal for some of the products in the market that are not touting best and fastest. There's some, and we're seeing that in our own numbers. We're starting to see there's opportunities where we can do better at that particular end of the segment. And
Okay.
so we started to do some research. We started to say, let's focus in on this
Hmm.
end of the segment. Let's do some quantitative and qualitative research.
Okay.
Let's ask people, what do you like? What do you not like?
Right.
And then we started to hear, you know what? I don't like that my bill goes up every year. Um, you offer me speeds. I don't even know what to do with a gig speed.
Right.
All I really want is, X, Y, and Z. And so we spoke to enough customers, and you hear, okay, I understand what's really important to the customer, and so we need to start doing something different than the rest of our business was doing. And so that's really where we started to say, okay, again, born out of the things that our customers are telling us, and what our prospects are telling us that we are missing, what we don't offer are some of these things. And so we start to say, okay, what would it look like? What's a product construct that could meet some of these needs? It's a portfolio of internet that might have, speeds of 100 megs or 200 megs.
Okay.
It's maybe some hardware. We recently launched a Wi-Fi 7 Wi-Fi router and modem combo. That's an amazing device. It can do symmetrical gig speeds. It has, the latest technology. Some of our customers, when we market that stuff, they're like, I don't know what that is, and I don't know what
Right.
I need it for.
I was just thinking, like maybe a lot of customers don't even understand the difference between some of the speeds. Like, what does it actually mean? Can I download something? Can I upload something? Like it's almost like a Boolean, like yes or no. They don't really understand the speed and the differences because there's so many options.
Exactly. I equate it to, kind of the Gillette razors. Like at some point, you're like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 razors. Like, how many razors do I need to
Right.
shave?
Yeah.
And so to your point, we started to talk about other things. We started talking about reliability. Because what
Okay.
we saw was some customers that went to our fixed wireless competitors. They're like, yeah, it's a low price, it's simple, but the service is not really reliable.
Right.
Because my mobile network might throttle me, or it might go up and down depending on like the usage of other people in my neighborhood. And we said, okay, so people want a consistently priced product that doesn't have all the bells and whistles, doesn't need to be super, super fast speeds, but it needs to be reliable.
Yep.
And we need to make it something that's flexible. That's a lot of the things that people spoke to, frankly, that they didn't like about the traditional Xfinity products. That there were things like, different promotional offers that then went to a higher priced level after a year or two. And
Hmm.
so a little bit of that predictability and a little bit of that flexibility, say, you know what, I'm gonna be on your service on my terms. And so we start to piece these things together and we say, okay, here's roughly what the concept is. We test that in marketing, or in research, I should say.
Yeah.
We also make sure from a finance standpoint that this thing is going to be economically viable.
Hmm.
Um, and then we start to say, okay, this thing has legs. It's resonating in research. The business model could be sound, and we had to make some choices. Do we build the infrastructure in this particular way that has this cost structure, or do we go with this
Mm.
opposite way that might have this other cost structure? And so we, had to make some trade-offs and choices based on what, again, ultimately what we think is best for the customer. Once we landed on those things and we said, okay, we're all arriving at this is the construct we're going to build.
Yeah.
Now let's go build it.
Right.
And so that's when we work with engineers to say, okay, well, typically how customers interact with our purchase flow is this particular way, but we want it to be really simple. And we need to take a lot of the bells and whistles out that they don't want to pay for. We need to take that out of the product and out of the purchase decisioning. So what are the requirements we need to write for our development partners
Mhm.
to strip some of those things out and make sure that, what ultimately is produced is a lower cost product that we can then sell at a much lower price and at a consistent price.
Mhm.
So we start to define those things. What does the hardware need to be? Does it need to be that latest, XB10 gateway that has the fanciest Wi-Fi, or what does it look like? What's the requirement for something that, to your point, just allows people to surf the web and
Yeah.
Netflix and have a video doorbell?
Yeah.
So write those requirements. And as our engineers are developing that, we then start to say, okay, once this thing is ready, how do we sell it? Where do we sell it? What do we
Mhm.
price it at?
Right.
And so that's when we, start to involve our go-to-market partners and say, okay, well, we need to sell it, but if we're going to sell it do we need to sell it only online, or should we sell it in retail stores?
Ah, okay.
Do we need our third-party retail to sell these products? How are our technicians and our frontline support agents going to, fix some of the problems that come up with any product? And so how do we train them? How do we get them ready to repair some of the issues that customers might come with?
Are
So
s-
those are the different decisions along the way.
are some of these things happening at the same time? Like you're building the product, but maybe pricing and marketing would inform the engineering of the product. Like, are these kind of sort of conversations happening at the same time, or is it very sequential the way you laid it out?
Yeah, so definitely not sequential.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things happening in
Yeah.
parallel, and to your point, it's all informing each other. You
Yeah.
can't make one decision in parallel.
Right.
Just like in agile development, there's an agile product development process, and
Okay.
it sort of informs each other. I think you start off with a relatively low fidelity concept of a product, and each function is kind of giving their input at that low fidelity level. Once you get some of those details, you refine it a little bit and have a higher fidelity concept. And then you kind of keep going through the journey with all those partners together. Legal
Mm,
is weighing in, finance is weighing in, engineering is weighing in, marketing and pricing is weighing in. And
yeah.
so you start with big questions. Should we offer digital care or not? Should we offer equipment or not? All the way
Yeah.
down to like, okay, now that we've answered some of those big questions, well, how many pieces of this equipment does every technician need to keep on their truck? And so you start to, get really, really fine with the types of questions that you're answering as you go. And
Wow.
then once you launch internally, that's a big moment, but you got to make customers aware. You got to market this, and customers don't really care about your launch date. They are going to buy your product. They're going to tell you what's working, what's not. And then how do you listen to your customers? How do you listen to your front line for what's the feedback coming in? What's broken? What needs optimizations? And then you go back and you refine that product that you launched. Again, the other interesting dynamic I would say is when you want to launch a product, you can keep building it and keep tweaking it until it's perfect, but you might never launch it.
Yeah.
And so, how do you make that trade-off between getting something in market,
Yeah.
getting it good enough that customers can start adopting it, start using it, and give you some feedback on how to improve it? And so that's another trade-off that we have to think about.
Earlier in this life cycle, you mentioned doing research with users, like identifying what users really want in this product. What does that process look like? How do you get information from, I guess, potential new customers or existing customers about what this now product is going to have? What are the features? How is it going to work? How do you actually conduct that research?
Yeah, so I think we start off with what's our research objective? Is
Yeah.
it to size the market? Then maybe that's a quantitative survey, and we just need a few questions that we're going to do in a survey to a lot of different people. On
Hmm.
the flip side, qualitative feedback that we might require, we're going to do video calls and
Okay.
calls and sit in the room with people. We're
Yeah.
going to ask them open-ended questions. We're going to listen in on what they're saying.
Okay.
You might show them a couple concepts and have them react to it
Hmm.
and say, like, give us your honest feedback. What do you like? What do you don't like? And that's we're doing all of those things.
Okay.
So that's a bit of how we're doing some of those research.
And
That
it
research.
And would you maybe do this kind of throughout the life cycle? Like you said, there's other decisions you have to make, little decisions. Do you provide equipment or do you not? Do you then say, okay, we're not really sure. We're going to conduct research again to answer some of these types of more granular questions?
Yeah, so I think those are good examples where yes, we're doing different rounds of research. I think the classic example is, well, what level should you price it at? And the
Yeah,
classic conjoint analysis might come in to
right.
say, okay, this would be a good time to do that kind of piece of research. So yes, it's not just upfront and forget about it, but to
Yep.
your point, as we have those big questions that come up, we can start to do the right research at the right time.
And
What you
then,
don't want to do is start rethinking about your strategy when you're 30 days from launch.
right,
So there's a bit of sequencing this, but yes, we're constantly doing that research, even after launch, user feedback.
right.
Well,
And then how do you release it into the market? This product or others, we're going to release this in one location, but is there a testing period where you're going to release it, but you're not going to release it, for example, across the entire United States?
yeah, so there definitely are trial periods that we'll do, and it differs depending on product. Sometimes if it's a software update or software change, when we update a feature, we might do kind of that classic, 1% of the footprint, um, make sure things are going smoothly, and then slowly scale that out. On the other side, when things require a lot more infrastructure and a lot of the other teams, like our frontline care agents, when you have to train folks on things,
Okay.
we might pick a market, or a couple markets to
Yeah.
say, all right, let's launch it in kind of a full way in that one market, see how it does before we launch it more broadly. So you kind of work out some of the issues in that market. Again, get some really good customer feedback as well, that you can implement before you roll it out to the broader customer base.
Can you talk about a new product that your team is working on right now that has yet to launch?
So last year, or actually 2 years ago, we launched a product called Wi-Fi Pass.
Hmm.
And this product was geared at customers that they didn't even want equipment necessarily. They were folks that wanted internet right now, right away. So we launched this product as you're browsing on different Wi-Fi networks. our network pops up and you can instantly purchase and get connected immediately.
Mhm.
So how do
Yeah.
we start to take that and maybe expand that? Are there different use cases? Maybe there's, I'm trying to think, trying to tread lightly of what I can say,
Sure.
but we think about this user, they're not just using internet necessarily at home, they're using internet on the go.
Yeah.
Obviously, we sell a mobile service, but in addition to that, how do we maybe move internet around with our customers,
I see.
and allow them to use it in key moments where, if you think about when you need internet and you're on the move during commutes, maybe when you're traveling,
Yeah.
are there certain events that you're going to and things like that? So what's the right product offering, and how do we deliver technology that enables you to have internet in those moments, especially if your mobile signal is congested and you're trying to order that Uber from a stadium and you're not getting good cell reception. What's the right product that we can offer for a use case like that?
You see. That could be your marketing. Keep your internet with you at all times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're hired on the marketing department.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that you use in product management, in your management of product life cycles. Any specific tools or platforms that your team relies on throughout the product development life cycle?
Yeah, there's one that's top of mind. We're working on today. A lot of times, what our role is to describe to our partners, hey, here's what the customer is trying to do, and here's the experience that we'd like the customer to have.
Right.
And so, engineers, please develop a solution that meets this customer experience and the customer journey. So we've been using a tool called Miro to really draw out customer flows.
Mhm.
And it's a dynamic collaborative tool where you can easily draw out a process flow. You kind of zoom in, zoom out. Like I said, we like to think of, from a product management standpoint, what are the major themes and the pillars that we want to make sure from the customer value proposition are alive in the customer touch points and the customer journey.
Mhm.
With each major super epic, you get a little more granular. And so you can zoom in. And so, Miro allows you to take like literally a big box and get a little more granular and say, okay, if we want to say, for example, when your internet goes out because of a thunderstorm, we want you to have seamless, backup internet. Well, what does that mean? What are the steps involved there? And
Right.
so you kind of zoom in and define what are the sub steps of that one thing. So, like I said, that's a helpful tool
Mhm.
to start to lay out at the various touch points of the level of fidelity. What's that super epic? What's that more granular epic? And ultimately, what's the technical requirement we're going to hand over to our engineers to develop a product?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with Miro a little bit. Talked to someone who does UX research and design, and he was telling me about Miro. So I actually did a short demo of that a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty cool. It's very powerful, very easy to use as well.
Yeah, and it's what I like about it is, on the front end as a non-technical
Yeah.
person, I can write just concepts
Yeah.
and I can iterate on that with someone who's a little bit more technical to again translate that into what they're ultimately going to code.
What advice would you give someone who's looking to break into product management?
Yeah, I think that a mistake that I often see is like folks trying to get very particular on one skill, get really one tool, one aspect of it.
Yeah.
I would say product management, the best product managers are the ones that think very broadly, very laterally. And
Mm,
so I think if you're trying to get into product management, um, get good at asking very basic questions, very first principle questions. Who is this segment? Who is the customer? What do they need? And think about then also like what are the impacts of that very simple question? That's the kind of skill more so than any one particular tool or
yeah.
anything like that. So that's what I'd say. And it's not more complicated than again sitting at the core of who is my customer and what do they need. If you start from there
Yeah.
and kind of ripple out, that's where the best product managers start. And so get good at identifying who your customer is and what they need.
Yeah.
And then the next logical questions after that will follow.